Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, good Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. Election results from yesterday, though none, obviously, Missouri. A lot of focus on Georgia, Texas, and Kentucky, because I guess you want to call it the Trump element. I wouldn't call it the Trump effect so much, but you've got the Secretary of State in Georgia, that would be Raffensperger, that was just real problematic for Americans, Republicans, the Trump campaign that were trying to sort through potential voter fraud in the 2020 election and participating in what we now know was an illegal phone recording of Donald Trump and the selective leaking of the recording of the Washington Post that really began the disinformation campaign that Trump had asked the Secretary of State to find him votes, which was not what he was asking, but that was the deliberate effort of the Secretary of State of Georgia at the time, was to paint Trump as doing that, and he really got the primary handed to him. On the losing end of it, you've got, Texas did not have anything going on yesterday election-wise other than Trump making an endorsement that really was contrary to what a lot of people worried he was going to do, and that is side with Cornyn, who has long been a disappointment to, I'd say, conservative Republican voters, to MAGA Republican voters. He is really the epitome of establishment that Republican grassroots folks have just really come to have a distaste for. Yet, for a number of reasons, there was fear that Trump was going to endorse Cornyn. That didn't happen. Of course, the sky is falling, along with the Massey election, which was a much different election than many of these other primaries in which Trump threw in his endorsement for reasons I've talked about in the past, and really wasn't really sure what the outcome was going to be. Massey ended up losing that by a little more. I thought it would be closer, not being obviously in Kentucky, not being in that district, but just viewing it from afar. I thought it would be a little bit closer than it was. I think Massey hurt himself a little bit in the last year. His personality a little more abrasive. He had maybe it's not a side note, but he lost his wife last year. He had just a lot of real. I think it was last year. A lot of difficult things going on in life that certainly any reasonable person might find alters their personality a bit in a way that isn't necessarily endearing to people. And you combine that with Trump really going after him, and I think that there were some things about Massey personality-wise that may have been a turnoff to people, including what many labeled as a real dirty trick he played on the day of the election, attempting by, I think, objective observers to falsely convince voters that Trump came out at like the last minute and decided to endorse him. So we'll talk about the implications of all this. I'm really enjoying the establishment reaction to the Massey loss, but even more so the Paxton endorsement in Texas. There is so much of a repetitive nature and cycle to the sky is falling element within the Democrat Party, or the Republican Party, rather. And the combination of the Massey race and the Paxton endorsement, this is the end of the Republican Party as we know it. I mean, this is it. Oh, my gosh. Donald Trump is... I mean, how many times do we have to go through this? How many times do we have to be told that Donald Trump, either because of his own existence, his own successful attempts to get the nomination, to run for president, to say this, to endorse that, to push this, it's the end of the Republican Party as we know it. All of the gains that Republicans have made. You want to get some of these people in the room and say, they're almost climate alarmist. They're Republican Party climate alarmist when it comes to the success and relevancy of the Republican Party. You continue to tell us that Donald Trump is the end of the Republican Party, the end of winning over this demographic, the end of gaining ground here and so forth. And it's like listening to Al Gore or Ocasio-Cortez talk about how we only have 10 years left to save the planet, and it comes and it goes, and then there's just these new dire pearl-clutching predictions of the sky is falling, and increasingly it is part of the reason that I think you get the establishment losing relevancy, because we've heard it already. We've been through this before. Boldness is a character trait that Trump brought to the Republican Party, that it was lacking desperately. And when it comes to leadership, human beings are drawn towards boldness. What does it say? Fortune belongs to the bold, I think is the saying. Something along those lines. That's the sentiment, anyhow. That it is the bold who are served up fortunes. It doesn't mean that they always win. But if you don't swing for the fences, if you never swing for the fences, if you're always attempting to bunt, you never get home runs. You rarely get to first base. And I'd say if there's one character trait that really separates Donald Trump and Trump supporters from the Republican Party in terms of the overall establishment, it's boldness. That's the character trait that there is a complete vacuum of in the Republican Party, and that is the character trait that Trump leads with. His decision to run for the presidency itself was insanely bold. I've mentioned it before, but there was once again circulating, as they always do, these montages of people mocking Donald Trump, and it was on Bill Maher's show and going around asking the panel which Republican's most likely to win the presidency. And this was, I think it was around the time Trump came down the escalator, and Ann Coulter said Donald Trump. And I mean, there was a combination of mockery and shock as to how stupid she could be. I think Joy Reid was one of the panelists, and she had this look on her face like, are you some sort of idiot? That boldness of climbing what otherwise would be the insurmountable mountains that, you know what, odds may be against us, but we're going to fight this thing anyway, and we're going to fight tooth and nail, because if you don't fight, you can't win. That's the thing that Donald Trump leads with, and it's the thing that the Republican Party just lacks completely. It's a vacuum of it. And you can see it particularly when it comes to this Texas Senate race. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a chance for showers through mid-afternoon, otherwise cloudy with a high near 65. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 55. For your Thursday, a 50% chance of showers throughout the day, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 72. And for Friday, showers with thunderstorms possible in the afternoon with a high near 76.
Yes. it's the Latin. It translates from Latin. Fortune favors the bold. Also translated into the brave as well. I don't know. I tend, for whatever reason, bold. It's the same. In my gut, I like the wording of fortune favors the bold a little bit better, but that may be because that's just the translation that I was more familiar with. But they both work, and it's true. It is absolutely not that the timid, the weak can't at times stumble into fortune. It does happen, but generally, if that is the case, it's because of the boldness of others. Coattails. Republicans certainly benefited in that capacity from Donald Trump. All right, let's get a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company text line. The Massey election is a huge loss for Americans. I think that there are instances, let me put it this way. I think 5-10 years from now, other than people who live in the Massey district or people that are just really, really hardcore obsessed with constitutionalism, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. And I mean, you're just sort of the 0.001% of nerds that can remember, well, one of the turning points in history was back in 1985 when this, just sort of these obscure to the normal person things. Other than those people, I don't think most people remember Massey. Not that he shouldn't be remembered, but we tend to, in the moment, because of our own passionate beliefs and convictions, which are oftentimes 100% correct, get really upset and angry and throw our hands up and be like, well, this is just horrible. And it may be horrible in the moment, but maybe this is rationalization to stay somewhat sane. I think to myself, will the direction of the country be different in 10 years because Massey's not in Congress? It could be. One of the problems that people like Massey oftentimes suffer is because they are so convicted in their beliefs, they don't oftentimes get a lot of stuff done. And it's because they are unwilling to wheel and deal, and it's part of what draws a lot of people to them because they will not compromise. And they won't wheel and deal. And when you are dealing with hundreds of people in Congress, many of which want to make a name for themselves, have their own personal agendas, their own professional agendas, not being ready or willing to wheel and deal with those people and schmooze with them makes it very, very, very difficult to get things done. And that oftentimes is the downside of being ultra focused on your own convictions and sort of tunnel vision, if you will, in terms of the ethics and morals of a person and the sort of individual that the character that may be extremely admirable. But oftentimes those people, unless they find themselves in an executive position, when they're in a sea of hundreds of other people, they don't necessarily alter the direction of the country. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't at times strike on certain elements that get a majority of people behind them on a particular issue, and then they sort of ride a wave of sorts, because that can happen. But it tends to be the exception. And it's part of this is all human nature stuff. And when it really comes down to it, it's the voter. And lots of voters tend to love the idea of people just getting along and compromising with one another, and without even caring what the compromise is. They just don't like the fighting, and they don't like feeling as if things aren't getting done. And there's this nice, comfortable, warm blanket of everyone getting along and everything's nice and wonderful. I genuinely believe that's a large part of the reason that Joe Biden even, quote, won or had any support, because they portrayed the ability to get back to normal. The normal of getting along, adults in the room, no more of the toxicity, no more of the name calling, which of course is an absurd narrative because it's always existed, because you're talking about human beings vying for power. But it's a narrative that I think they were somewhat successful in selling, that suddenly all the nastiness, all those things you don't like will go away. And that makes a significant portion of the population feel good. And so that they like the comfort of it all. They like being told, don't worry, everything will be just fine, even if it's an absurd narrative. Now, the Massey loss, to me, this was a different targeting by Trump than the successful targeting he had in the past, particularly if you look at Indiana. And I felt that Indiana, all those state races, you had a handful of them, and there were a lot of challengers in primaries looking to unseat sometimes leadership positions. Some of these people had been in there for decades, but they refused to redistrict. So Trump wanted them out. And I felt that a large part of the reason that his desire to get the majority of them out was successful wasn't because Trump said get these people out, but because of the reason Trump said get these people out. And as Republicans tired of elected officials that are Republicans constantly choosing to lose and not fight fire with fire against Democrats. Massey was a different situation because Massey was fiery. He wasn't establishment. And so I think that he did have a passionate support group. Usually establishment people don't have passion within their ranks. They get elected and reelected because of name recognition because of that element of the culture that I was mentioning earlier of people that just want to feel safe and well that person's been in there for a while and I'm not aware of anything really bad that they've done. And then of course you get all these campaign ads that are telling you how wonderful they are, and so that element of the population that likes the safety, that's who generally sticks with the establishment. Massey is one that I think but they're not passionate people. Somebody like Massey has passionate people. So does somebody like Trump. So it was an interesting battle to watch play out who was going to succeed, and Donald Trump's the one who succeeded. I think the difference between the reason that some Trump supporters decided that Massey needs to go is because, and some of this may have been fair, it may have been unfair, it was felt that it became more than disagreeing at times like Rand Paul does. Rand Paul clearly disagrees with Donald Trump on a number of issues, clearly votes contrary to the way that Donald Trump wants, and he's vocal about it. But Rand Paul manages to do it in a way that doesn't come off as anti-Trump. And Massey, whether this was fair or unfair, I believe was beginning over the last year or so to come off as anti-Trump. It became almost like, well, you knew if Trump was for it, he was going to be against it. And he sort of became, somebody that the media kept citing like a Marjorie Taylor Greene. And once you are someone who comes out against Trump, that suddenly the media is really touting and focusing on and suddenly painting you as reasonable, that turns a lot of people against you that are MAGA, that are Trump, that otherwise might still be sympathetic with you. Because I think Rand Paul's a great example because he has been consistently against Trump on certain things, particularly in the same areas that Massey is when it comes to foreign policy and Israel. And they're both from Kentucky. And they both have a very supportive, passionate base. Rand Paul survives. Massey did not. And I think that Massey just began to come across as more anti-Trump than he did principally against Trump on a number of issues. There is one other interesting caveat here. Maybe not a caveat, but a footnote. For this scorn against Trump for not endorsing Massey for re-election, simply because they have their disagreements. It shouldn't be forgotten that when Trump was running for re-election, Massey endorsed Ron DeSantis instead of Donald Trump. Now, there are obviously some differences. You had Trump running for re-election after he wasn't in office for 4 years, but he was still considered to be almost an incumbent president running for re-election. And, Massey came out very vocally against Donald Trump getting the nomination the second time around. So, that doesn't mean that he loses, that he has to be happy with or accepting of Trump involving himself so heavily in his own race. But for those that think that somehow it was spiteful or inappropriate for Trump to try to derail Massey's attempt to win the primary, to win the nomination again to go ahead and run for that seat, Massey did the same thing to Trump. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, we got a traffic update. Jump to that. Also, weather. I do want to talk about the Paxson endorsement and the once again establishment saying the sky is falling because of this endorsement, which was not in the bag. This is the U.S. Senate race. Cornyn is the incumbent, though he has been pretty establishment Republican, particularly when it comes to certain Second Amendment things. People were worried. There were a lot of conservatives that are Paxson supporters that were worried Donald Trump was going to jump in and actually endorse Cornyn. It didn't turn out that way. The implications of all that coming up. I'm Nick Reed.
Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see a chance for showers through mid-afternoon, otherwise cloudy with a high near 65. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 55. For your Thursday, a 50% chance of showers throughout the day, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 72. And for Friday, showers and thunderstorms possible in the afternoon with a high near 76.
Okay. Yesterday, I guess it was, or the day before, found the timing of it to be interesting right before some of these primaries got underway. Trump made an endorsement in Texas, and this has been a much watched race because Cornyn is establishment Republican. He's been in it forever and a day. You got the Lieutenant Governor Paxton, which is, quote, controversial and has his own ethics issues. But, again, this is all stuff, which is what I find about Paxton. And I'm talking as an outsider here. You could find perfectly reasonable people that think that he's an unethical, corrupt guy, but then you're also going to find a lot of people who say that's just crap that the establishment is throwing at him because of the establishment. All I know is thus far, the accusations that I've heard thrown at Paxton are pretty much in line with what was thrown at Trump. Now, Trump is a unique individual that has the ability and has demonstrated the ability to survive accusations thrown at him that others could not. Is Paxton the sort that can push through it? I think one of the things that Trump has done is paved the way for Republicans to say, you know what? Tired of playing by separate rules. Democrats get to vote for people that are accused of being corrupt. Sometimes they are corrupt, and everyone's absolutely fine with it. But our hands are constantly tied. And if there is a Republican that comes along that is more in line with my belief system in terms of policy, why should I have to reject that person because they've been accused of having an affair or they've been accused of doing this unethical thing? It really is another set of rules that Republicans have put upon themselves, self-imposed. Years ago, a conversation with a lefty about the double standard and this very issue, and this person on the left made the comment that, hey, we've never claimed to be the party of family values. Now, that wasn't really true, but I thought it was an interesting acknowledgement. Hey, you guys are putting these rules on yourself. That was as a lefty Democrat, his perspective. You guys go around talking about character matters. That's not us. Don't put your rules on us. We don't have to abide by your rules. And he was right. Trump, for better or worse, an impact Trump has had is making Republican voters or allowing them to feel as if I no longer have to put some of these restrictions on my vote that Democrats don't put on themselves. Doesn't necessarily mean that any sort of ethical baggage accusations against Paxton aren't going to hurt. I'm just tired of the establishment telling us, well, you can't support this person over here because of this, and this, particularly when it's not policy stuff. Now, if it's somebody who's pro-abortion and they support raising taxes and bigger government and DEI and policy things that are in line with Democrats, that's a different issue. And if all things are equal, when it comes to policy, when it comes to resumes, other than one personally is a piece of trash while the other is an upstanding citizen, I guess you have the luxury of picking which one that you want. Now, this isn't to say one way is right while the other way is wrong. It's just the landscape has changed, and Republican voters have liberated themselves to some degree from these self-imposed restrictions. The new narrative is that, well, Texas is now in play. And even if it's not, other states may lose because Republicans are now going to have to funnel additional dollars to this race that they otherwise would not have to, and that money has to come from somewhere. And so that because of the psychological shellacking that would come along with Texas switching to a Democrat senator when it's as solidly red as it is, they're going to, hell or high water, spend any dollar amount possible in order to make sure that of all the races they win, Texas certainly is going to be the one. And if that means taking money away from some of these other toss-up states, so be it. And so a win for Texas, yes, Paxton may win, but it could come with a loss elsewhere that otherwise would not have been a loss because of the reallocation of resources. And they point to, again, Paxton being controversial. And the idea here is that Tallarico, the Democrat, who is a nutcase and still really unknown by a lot of people throughout Texas in terms of a lot of the stuff that he said and his beliefs, what he wants to do for this country, the number of genders there are. They believe that Tallarico is going to have an easier time beating Paxton. Now, but here's the thing. The polling does not indicate that. All of this rhetoric is not in line with the polling. And while polls are polls, yes, polls are polls, and that doesn't mean, particularly this far out, that Paxton has just as good of odds as winning as Cornyn would. It certainly doesn't mean that he is going to have a more difficult time. I want to share some of the polling numbers coming up. And, of course, Cornyn could still win this thing, but I suspect at this point, as they are very close and this primary is coming up very soon, the runoff primary, that is, that this Trump endorsement and the momentum behind it with so many of these other races going Trump's way is really going to be a huge boost to the Paxton race. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, your outdoor living life. You can do it at home. Oftentimes you want to just be in the outdoors, springtime, summertime, fall, well, even wintertime, I suppose. But you always think, well, where can we go? Where is it we can go out? So we'd like to go outside and have drinks. What place has a good patio? Sometimes you even see that posted on social media. Hey, we're wanting to go have some mimosas. What place does mimosas and has a nice patio area? And oftentimes you're doing that because you don't have a nice patio area, certainly one that can accommodate your friends. But imagine being able on a Sunday or a Saturday or whenever you want to have mimosa time or whatever it may be, shots of tequila time, you name it. You can be like, hey, guys or gals or whomever, why don't you come over here and we're going to spend an afternoon having a really good time on our outdoor patio. You can have it at home. Hardscaping, landscaping, lighting, drainage, you name it, they can do it. You can see reviews. You can see before and after pics. You can even do a ballpark estimator on their site at hunterhardscapes.com, also under Nick's endorsements at ksgf.com. Fully, wholly, 100% recommend them to you. Here is Vice President J.D. Vance on the endorsement Donald Trump gave Paxton over Cornyn for the primary race in Texas for U.S. Senate?
First of all, I think the president's very gratified by the response that he's heard from the base and from a lot of voters, I think, who are passionate about Ken Paxton. We think Ken Paxton is going to be a great senator for the people of Texas, but most importantly, a great United States senator who can work on solving the problems that all of us confront as a country together. I've known John Cornyn for a long time, but unfortunately, when it really counted, Ken Paxton was there for the country, was there for the president, and that's why he ultimately earned the president's endorsement. He thinks he's going to be a better senator, thinks he's going to make a better candidate, and so I do think it sends a message, but really not just the endorsement, but one of the things the president has done very effectively, going back 10 years in his leadership of the Republican Party and the country as president of the United States, is he said, I want people who fight for the good. I want people who can't be bought by corporate lobbyists, who can't be bought by Wall Street, who can't be bought by special interests, who are going to go to Washington and fight for the people who actually elected them to those positions. And I think one of the things we've seen in the Republican Party, while I can't say that all of our representatives are perfect or all of our senators are perfect, we have seen a much better crop of talent come into Washington since Donald Trump has been the leader of the party and the leader of the movement. I do think we're going to continue to see that happening. But I think the message that people should take from this is fundamentally, you have got to serve the people who sent you. And if you don't do that, you're going to find yourself out of step with voters or out of step with the president of the United States. And that's not a good place to be politically.
All right, now, Cornyn, for his part, has said that I've worked closely with President Trump through both of his presidential terms, voted with him more than 99% of the time. He's consistently called me a friend in this race. It's now time for Texas Republican voters to decide if they want a strong nominee to help our GOP candidates down ballot, defeat Tallarico in November, or a weak nominee who jeopardizes everything we care about. I trust Republican voters in Texas. Now, here's the thing. When you look at the polling numbers, it is a toss-up in terms of a general election between these two. This is part of the problem I have with this narrative, is it's out of touch with what the voters are saying currently in Texas. So I pulled up the most recent. By the way, this will be decided next Tuesday between Cornyn and Paxton. So let's look at Cornyn versus Tallarico, the Democrat. Now, right now, you have the Real Clear Politics average, which is a rolling average of a number of different most recent pollings, shows Tallarico beating Cornyn by 0.5%. It's within margin of error. You've got the TSU YouGov poll, which was taken April 22nd through May 5th, and it shows Tallarico at 44%, Cornyn at 45%, so up 1. There was a University of Texas poll prior to that, showed Tallarico up by 7. Then you had a University of Houston poll that was earlier in the year, Cornyn up by 1, and then an Emerson poll earlier in the year, Cornyn up by 3. So, arguably, the Tallarico split of plus 7 could have been a fluke, but nonetheless, when you look at the polling that has taken place this year, it shows Tallarico up 0.5 percentage point in the general election over Cornyn. Again, it's toss-up. Paxton, which Cornyn and the establishment portray as so much weaker than Tallarico, than Cornyn, rather, to take on Tallarico. Real Clear Politics average over the exact same polls and polling period shows Tallarico up 1.5%. So, insignificant difference within the margin of error. So, for all intents and purposes, all of the polling, and it's the same polling outlets that measured Paxton versus Tallarico, also measuring Cornyn versus Tallarico. So, you've got the same methodology, you have the same sample taking place, shows that either of them are statistically tied with Tallarico. And while polls today can be much, much different than polls in the future, it still defies this idea that the people of Texas are ready to throw their support behind Tallarico if Paxton is the Republican opponent because he's so weakened by scandal. This is the problem I have with that entire narrative. If these polls showed Tallarico beating Paxton by 20 percentage points and Cornyn was in a statistical tie, I'd say that argument, it makes sense. If consistent polling showed that. The problem is consistent polling does not show that. Frankly, it shows either which one. You're going to be in the same boat. The establishment would argue, well, the problem is once it gets into the general election, the people of Texas are going to begin to know more about Paxton and his scandals. Well, at the same time, you're going to have people learning more about Tallarico, and I would argue that Texans are much more familiar with Paxton as the Attorney General, who has been in the headlines over the years because of the battle between him and the establishment, as opposed to Tallarico, that people outside of his congressional district in Texas don't even know the guy, other than the context of the primary race, in which Jasmine Crockett was essentially wedged out by the Democrat Party so the white guy could get the nominee. Sure, there will be some people in the general election that will hear accusations against Paxton for the first time, but Tallarico, comparatively speaking, is virtually unknown to Texas, and that guy is a whack job. I mean, this is a guy who talks about Jesus wants abortions, and there's 6 genders, and he's just a nut. I think he's also a vegan, or he's talked about being in Texas, cattle land. When you look at the polling, it says in terms of the voters of Texas, there is no difference between the two candidates taking on Tallarico. And Tallarico is the lesser known, certainly, obviously, of Cornyn, but also of Paxton. And he is way out of line with what would be considered traditional Texas values. Does this mean that Republicans won't have to spend more than they would have with Cornyn? No, it doesn't mean that. But I'm just, this whole sky is falling, and here we go again. Trump is going to screw everything up for the Republican Party. At some point, it gets old. And it is out of line with the information that is currently available. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Springfield Livestock Marketing Center wanted to tell you about their big 2-day sale. There we go. That's coming up at the end of the month. That is May 29th and 30th, and they will host their horse sale those 2 days. And what's different about this than previous horse sales is that they will also include tack and outdoor items as well. So maybe you're not in the market for a horse, but maybe something like a trailer, they will definitely have those available. So Friday, the sale will start at 5 p.m. Saturday, the sale will start at 9 a.m. Now, to check out some of the horses that will be available, visit their Facebook page, Springfield Livestock Horse Sale. Now, they will have plenty of sales in between before this 2-day sale, so you can check those out on their calendar, springfieldlivestock.com. Once again, though, that 2-day sale, May 29th and 30th, and as always, you can find all of the contact information for Springfield Livestock under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right. We'll get some of your text messages coming up here in the upcoming hour. Also, what we've learned about the San Diego shooters and just all over the map. They actually are an incredible product of DEI, where everything is about race and the divisions of race. They also really, really hated Donald Trump in the manifesto, writing about how it is that Trump needs to be assassinated. So, of course, that narrative's gone. All that coming up. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. You want a lot of great things. Home loans, certainly one of them. There are certain goods and services. Sure, you can get mediocre and like, well, what are you going to do? Buy a milkshake. It's not the best milkshake in the world, but it's going to be gone in 4 minutes anyway, and I can always get a better milkshake tomorrow. But home loans, much bigger than that. You were talking about a very long-term financial commitment, and the process itself. It's not just about the rates and the terms, because there's some standardized, sort of parameters there to a degree. But are all of the offerings available to you being provided to you? There's so much more than just the traditional loan or the USDA loan or the you're a veteran loan. There are a lot of different types of loans out there that we assume everyone is aware of and in the loop on, but it doesn't always work that way. A lot of folks, this is one of their many jobs that they may do, particularly if they work in a larger institution. But the characters in their team, laser focused, they do home loans, they do refinancing, they can help you with reverse mortgages as well. You can read reviews, they go above and beyond, and many, many, many instances of people that have been having frustrations with the current lender or the current folks helping them, and then for a second opinion, go to the characters in their team and find themselves saying, thank goodness we did this. I want a great homeloan.com, because you do. Text message: Zionist Israel bought the seat in Kentucky. The republic is dead, and the oligarchy reigns supreme. Massey was the last untainted congressman. A sad day. Now, I disagree with a number of components to that. I don't think that Massey was the only, out of the hundreds and hundreds of members of Congress, the only one that was untainted. I think to declare that, you would have to know about every single member of Congress. I think oftentimes people will make a declaration of that, couldn't tell you 10 members of Congress, let alone know anything about them. I understand the feeling, thinking, well, they're just all corrupt. But then you find one you like, and suddenly that's the only one that's good. That's just not realistic, again, unless you just really have researched every single member of Congress. And you are so in the know. And even then, you could be wrong. I think it's healthy to recognize that each and every one of us live in our own world, and simply because we may not be familiar with every member of Congress, and there's only one that we really know that we like, that means that's the only one that's untainted. I just don't think that's a realistic approach. And I think the downside of that is oftentimes you toss aside other people who really are good. I don't think it's fair to a person in Congress that really genuinely is there trying to do the right thing, completely honest, above board. They are given an extremely hard time by not just one, but both political parties. They go up there, fight the fight, and then they get dismissed as, well, you're just one of everyone, the rest of them. That's not right. I understand where the emotional reaction comes from, but it's just not. Maybe it's nitpicking over rhetoric. But I don't think it's healthy for people to dismiss every single member of Congress as tainted, as opposed to just one. I also don't know that Israel cares as much about the congressional district that covers, I think, part of Louisville, Kentucky, and I think it's is it the eastern part? I forget exactly where the districts are. I just don't know that Israel, of all the things they have to worry about, the Thomas Massey race is one of them. And I'm not saying that there aren't serious implications there. Massey has been very vocal against American support for Israel for reasons that a lot of even Trump supporters agree with. But it hasn't changed anything. If Massey somehow were responsible for preventing the Trump administration from allying with Israel in the ways that he wanted to, then you could argue that potentially it would make sense that Israel would say, hey, this guy is stopping what we want. It's such a contradiction because on one hand, we're told Israel's getting everything they want out of the Trump administration. Well, if that's the case, what the hell do they care what Massey's doing or saying? Now, of course, you're going to have some very pro-Israel and pro-Jewish organizations that are against him, but that's because he's against them. Not necessarily because they're Jewish, but because if you have some like AIPAC or some of these other organizations that focus heavily on Israel, the nature of that means that they are going to also be supportive of American support for Israel. And someone like Thomas Massey is more of an isolationist, not just with Israel, but other countries in general. He's more of a cut and dry. We shouldn't have anything to do. I mean, he's voted against foreign aid for every country for every reason under the sun. He's like, no, I just don't believe in it at all, as long as we're running a deficit. And if you are a political action committee that has Israel as part of your interest, and there is a person that says, I do not want Israel nor any country getting any American help, financially speaking, then yeah, they're going to be against Massey. And they're going to be for someone that's like, well, I think we should give foreign aid to our allies. So it's a natural battle, but that doesn't mean that the Mossad or the Zionist or Israel gives two licks about what Thomas Massey's doing. Because Thomas Massey, I think we could argue, has not had any meaningful impact on our foreign policy when it comes to Israel. I don't think accepting or wanting to believe those factors are helpful to anyone. I think it's not helpful to supporters of somebody like Massey. By the way, I more times than not supported where Massey comes from, and 1,000 times over more than the establishment Republican Party. I get why he and Trump battled. I don't think it's the end of the republic that he lost. Would we be much better off as a country if we had a president and a political party that was run by people who believed and voted and operated the way that he does? I think probably we would be much better off. Maybe some areas that I would have disagreement, but overall, yeah, I think we'd probably be better off. But I also understand that in political parties, you get these battles. And listen, part of me also, I get tired, but maybe I roll a little bit over these people that come out swinging at Donald Trump, and then when he swings back, like, how dare you? Like, well, what did you, you can't have it both ways. You can't come out, and particularly when Trump is running for re-election and campaign endorse Ron DeSantis saying Donald Trump should not be president again, and then when he does the same to you in a primary, act like this is the end of the world. Come on. And yeah, there are times that Massey's been supportive, and Trump has endorsed Massey in the past. You know, if you're going to play the game, you got to play the game. It doesn't mean you have to be happy with the outcome, but when the outcome doesn't occur, I just think it's healthy to recognize, hey, yeah, it's a disappointment, and this is a seat that was held by somebody that's more constitutional than everyone else, and it's a disappointment in that capacity. But to see it as some sort of greater global Israel's controlling a congressional seat in Kentucky of all places now because they control everything, I just don't believe that ultimately is in touch with reality. Springfield's Talk 104.1, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a chance for showers through mid-afternoon, otherwise cloudy with a high near 65. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 55. For your Thursday, we'll see a 50% chance of showers throughout the day, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 72. And for Friday, showers with thunderstorms possible in the afternoon with a high near 76.
There's a good chance that there's not going to be a tremendous amount of focus on the suspected San Diego shooters because these weren't some Trump supporters. It's the standard story. Now, they were all over the place, though I would say that they are a creation of the left. These are DEI-minded individuals where everybody is categorized based off of race and pitted against one another. While they are the bad guys in terms of, well, one of them I think is this whole story has been, they keep mentioning Kane Clark. I saw even Fox News, they're talking about Kane Clark and his accomplice. What is that? I mean, what is that? We know the accomplice's name. It's Caleb Vasquez. Is it because the name isn't a white-sounding name that it's not getting billing? And maybe that isn't the reason. I just don't know. I kept story after story, whether it's in print or it's been on the news, it kept referencing Kane Clark and his accomplice. Now, some of the stories are printing the name Caleb Vasquez. But the entire tone makes it seem as if, well, Kane Clark is the ultimate real bad guy here, and then, there was just somebody along with him, no big deal. And they're both participants in this thing. There's a manifesto has been released, and I mean, they just hate everyone, and they see everything through the lens of race and sexual identity and DEI. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. They talk about in the manifesto, among other things, quote, "It would be impossible to talk about the right today without talking about Trump and the Make America, quote, great again movement. A lot of people still seem to cling to him, thinking him as some sort of white savior, as if it were still 2016. Was he ever really our guy? Probably not. The evidence surely says that against this idea. Like nearly every billionaire, he was always a bought and there's some verbiage here. I don't know what it means, but he talks about Judaism and so forth. So, anti-rich, anti-billionaire, anti-Trump. Another portion that was written, almost a taunting encouragement of the left, arguing that the left doesn't do enough. Writing, "You hate Trump so much, then kill him!" exclamation point. And this time, don't miss. Or better yet, he's already on his way out. Take out Vance instead. He's best buddies with the CEO of Palantir, and so if he makes it into office, you can be guaranteed you'll live in a real-life 1984. Writing, "And for the MAGA-tard boomers eating this message up from whatever AI slop using YouTube channel or Fox News segment is informing you of it to spin me into some type of radical leftist, yes, I am, inciting violence from the left. Because as an accelerationist, I know that it takes all sides opening fire to cause that much desired social collapse." Now, there's a tremendous amount of writing. A lot of it's regarding, trans and anti-LGBT and basically anti-everything except for what they are, including anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, anti-billionaire. Now, the language they're speaking is the language of the left, and that is the language of violence. It's interesting to watch some people on the left on one day celebrating Luigi Mangione because he used violence to ultimately kill someone with whom he disagreed, but then act appalled whenever other people carry out violence in order to kill people with whom they disagree. This is the problem with the left. They don't have a anchored morality. They don't have a belief system that says you don't murder people just because you disagree with them. Their belief system is you don't murder people, well, unless it's the CEO of a healthcare company, or well, unless it's the Hitler reincarnate, or well, unless it's some right-wing Christian speaking on college campuses. Now, they'll sometimes, if they're elected, will pay lip service to, well, of course, violence is never the answer. But then they go on justifying why it is that people do this stuff. But you got to understand. Oh, you take away people's health care, this is what happens. Oh, you're a bigot, this is what happens. You call people names, this is what happens. So, of course, I don't agree with it, but you got to understand why people do this, see? They rationalize it. They justify it while claiming that they don't. It becomes very, or it should become difficult for people on the left to condemn shooters like the San Diego mosque shooters, when increasingly you have a majority of young left-leaning Democrats say that they support political violence if it means getting their way. I mean, this is what these people were doing. And, of course, it's, once again, the hypocrisy of, well, it's different, see, because there are certain categories of people that you aren't supposed to do it to. There's certain categories of people that are allowed to do it. As opposed to what's generally the conservative principle of you just don't do it. There is no, well, unless it's this, or yeah, but this or that, or it's justified because of that. You just don't murder people, even if you disagree with them. This world that the left has created with DEI, in which you're a white person, you're in this category. You're LGBTQ, you're in this category. You are cisgender, you're in this category. You're a billionaire, and you're in this category. These two shooters lived in that world. They were obsessed with this world. They lived in a world, in their minds, that the left has created, one that divides people into categories and rationalizes violence when it comes to dealing with people whom you disagree. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Well, let's jump to traffic, then 90 seconds from there. Weather update, Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see a chance for showers through mid-afternoon, otherwise cloudy skies with a high near 65. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 55. For your Thursday, a 50% chance of showers throughout the day, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 72. And for Friday, showers with thunderstorms possible in the afternoon with a high near 76.
Just want to make one other comment here regarding the alleged shooters of the mosque out in California, and the fact that these are people living in a DEI world, a world in which everybody is categorized. And this is such a defining difference between the left and the more conservative and even MAGA part of the country, in which so many of us just want to see people as people, and that's it. We just want to, yeah, okay, we have differences, but all right, fine. We don't really have to focus on that so much. We're human beings. You are not defined by your skin color. You are not defined by your sexuality. You are not defined by this or that. You are you. You have a soul, just like I do. You're a creation of God, like I am. And wanting to view people as individuals. And there was a period of time in which the left at least coexisted with that belief system, but there was a period of time in which they began shifting, saying, no, you can't believe that, because then you are part of a problem in society. Colorblind is racism. And they began this overt effort, and much of it is pushed in the public schools, and this is, again, DEI, in which you cannot just see people as people. You have to view them in categories. You have to recognize that some categories are the good guys and some are the bad guys. We've gone through this, and some of the teachings that employees in the Springfield Public School District were forced to go through several years ago, in which Protestants were oppressors and white people were oppressors and law enforcement were oppressors. And then this whole idea that, well, if you're this, like, for example, if you're black, you can't be racist. And so not only do they attempt to force everyone to recognize that we are all in categories, but then they create a moral hierarchy that pits them against one another. And that is an aggressive, proactive attempt to shame or to force people into giving up this notion that people are people, that we're all created by God, we're all human beings, and we should be treated individually based off of our character as opposed to some sort of label we're given. And you see the difference in how people are treated. You see the difference between hostility versus harmony. And the irony is, you'll have the DEI crowd try and somehow paint the shooters of the mosque as a reason that we need DEI when they are a result of it. You read through their manifesto, and it is they lived in a world of DEI, a world that is all about categories of people. Those are individuals who did not live in the world like so many of us do, in which people are people. And they should be treated accordingly as individuals. And they should be loved as human beings and treated with a level of respect. and not seen because of a category, not assuming that they are good simply because they look a certain way, or assuming they're bad simply because they're a certain race. You imagine these two shooters would not have, based off their writings, carried out this shooting if they had a colorblind mindset, if they had a mindset of we're all human beings that should be treated equally, we should not be categorized. But you could tell they were obsessed with that world. And it's all the more reason that it is dangerous. DEI is dangerous. This dividing people into categories and demanding you be an ally of this category or you be opposed to that category. It is dangerous. As sadly, a number of people learned at that mosque just yesterday or the day before. All right, I want to get a traffic update and then share some other more uplifting stuff, shall we, in just moments. I'm Nick Reed. Billy Long confirmed as U.S. ambassador to Iceland. Yeah.
Are you going to do the song?
Billy Long, Billy Long. Oh, going to have to rewrite it for his new position. A news leader reporting the U.S. Senate confirms Springfield native and former IRS Commissioner Billy Long as ambassador to Iceland Monday, April 18th. Senate voted 46-43 to confirm Long and 48 other nominees for U.S. Marshals, U.S. Attorneys, and ambassadors. Yea votes were all Republican senators, while mostly Democrat and independent senators voted nay. 11 senators did not vote. According to reporting by the Missouri Independent, Long faced backlash earlier this year for joking with former U.S. House colleagues about Iceland becoming the 52nd U.S. state. Long apologized for the statement in an interview with Arctic Today, nonprofit Alaska-based newsroom that covers the Arctic region. This is how unserious the left really is. And you think about some of the things that people on the left say, some like really serious, vile things that Billy Long had. He didn't have to apologize, and I understand why he did, but that this was even a worthy question. joking about Iceland becoming the 52nd state. Now, this was playing off of Greenland and Trump talking about it. And, well, Canada becoming, well, I guess it would be up for grabs. For a while, Canada, the 51st state, then Greenland. And so, Billy Long told a joke. I mean, we're not even talking about an off-color joke. It's how unserious the left is. And how much we're lacking real, true intellectual debate in this country, though sometimes you get it. Sometimes you get it. Within the Republican Party, between the more constitutionally minded Republicans, but between Republican and Democrat, it's totally lacking. The left is incapable of making any sort of coherent debate points or arguments that are grounded in reality. It's all hysterics. At least when it's within the Democrat Party, it's fun to watch. I'll say that. But I mean, it's just embarrassing. I mean, you told a joke about okay. So anyhow, yeah, that will, I guess, get the. Well, I guess not U-Haul. Well, I don't know. I just fly everything there, I suppose. I think I've long talked about Iceland being a place I want to go, and I've checked, and the flights are relatively cheap. There's some tourist stuff to do there, and I think it would be an interesting place to live. I had read, I think I talked about this also, that when you are an ambassador to a country, I believe you cannot leave that country but for a couple weeks, I want to say, out of the year. It's almost like that's your job, and like a job, you get a couple weeks vacation where, oh yeah, go and do what you want. You don't have to be here. And I believe being an ambassador is similar to that you have just a period of time that you can leave the country. But other than that, you're supposed to be. Now, I don't know how hard and fast those rules are, how they monitor them. They may be pretty strict. And I don't know, it seemed odd at first, but then I thought, well, actually, that makes perfect sense. It's your job. So, congratulations, Billy Long. Now, if he had just 10 years ago, when he's still a member of Congress, by the way, your future has you as the ambassador to Iceland. It'd be fascinating, the thought process of, now, how did that come about? This is other potentially good news. It's not political in nature at all, depending on your age. It may be indifferent to you. But Pizza Hut, according to the New York Post, is bringing back its old school restaurant features, and what's getting a lot of the highlighting here are the red and white checkered tablecloths, but they are also, according to the report, going to be bringing back the vinyl booths, the ones that no longer had them, the Tiffany-style lamps, the red cups, those sort of textured red cups that you could the deep red, barely see through, that all of that is coming back. They note in the story that Tim Sparks, who's president of Dayland, D-A-L-A-N-D Corporation, which is out of Kansas and operates almost 100 Pizza Hut locations across the country, is helping keep Pizza Hut alive by rewinding the clock, redecorating over 80 of the modern, stark-looking locations to make them look like they did decades ago, and that means putting back on the red roofs and the tablecloths and the lamps and the red cups again. The salad bar is apparently going back. Now, some of the locations, I don't know how far removed they are from the more nostalgia look of the Pizza Hut. The Republic one I'm kind of familiar with, though, the drive-through really since COVID has been what I've used in the instances that I've used Pizza Hut, though a couple of times went in just to grab it because the window was stuck or something like that. And I didn't really look around too much. So I don't know, these more modern Pizza Huts that I've even necessarily been in one. So some of these may not necessarily see that much of a change, though some may see a little. I don't know what color cups they use any longer. I just don't know. It references bringing back even like Pac-Man games to put in some of these Pizza Huts and so forth. A lot of people are rejoicing at this, the nostalgia of it. Others are saying bring back the old recipe. You need to bring back the old recipes. As restaurants over time have changed recipes, and a lot of people have said Pizza Hut has done the same thing. I never noticed, though there was one posting in the New York Post story that referenced the original pan pizza on X, commenting they need to go back to the original pan pizza recipe that rocked. The Hubs and I DoorDashed one a few months back. After at least 20 years, it was terrible, unrecognizable. We ended up throwing most of it away. Well, now I wouldn't go that far. It is pizza after all. But I did wonder, there have been a couple of times when I ordered what I thought was the deep dish, and it just seemed but so much thinner to me. And I thought, am I ordering something wrong? And I'm wondering if that's what it's talking about. Because in my mind, those deep dish, they were just, it was really thick. And it just the last couple of times I ordered what I thought was going to be that, it wasn't. So I don't know if that's what it was referencing or not. But anyway, I would add pitchers of soda. Now that's another thing that Pizza Hut, I remember it being known for, is that you would order an entire pitcher of soda. And, of course, the pizza buffet. I don't know that any of them do that any longer. In terms of Pizza Huts, some others, obviously, we're godfathers every week and do a number of things with them, and they've got the buffets there. But no word as to whether they'll bring that back or not. But a little bit of the nostalgia for those of you that miss, as they say, the good old days, which I suppose whatever that window of time is depends on your age. For me, 80s and 90s. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. You don't know how much of it is a passage, a rite of passage when you get to a certain age and you start really bitching about how things were better. But it just really, truly seems as if when it comes to restaurants, the overall atmosphere we're talking about, there's a New York Post story and how the owner of over like 100 Pizza Huts, some of the more modern ones, is rolling the clock back and going to, replace the tablecloths back to the red white and have the Pac-Man machines and the salad bar and the red cups and all of that stuff that was synonymous with Pizza Hut in the 80s and 90s, and it just really seemed as if there's this period of time where everything quote modernized, and and some of it I get. I was told, or I read at one point, that the reason a lot of these different fast food restaurants have, when they build them, the new ones, or they remodel them, it is all very, in the minds of some people, dystopian. It's gray. It's just all very boring. And the personality being sucked out of it is because increasingly you have a lot of markets that have such stringent rules and regulations about aesthetics of new buildings that they've made them as plain and boring as possible so that it decreases the likelihood that they will try to build a new facility or remodel one in a market that has aesthetic rules and regulations that will prevent them from being personality driven. So in other words, if it's bright and fun and you're going to remodel or build and you get some town like, well, now we have a certain look in our town and this is just a little, it's a little too loud for what we're accustomed to. We like more of the sleek squareness, and that by making the designs extremely boring and that you're never going to run into a city or a town regulation that's like, no, that's just too boring for here. That it just make it as plain and generic. That's the term I'm looking for. Generic as possible to avoid a particular situation like that. I don't know how relevant that is. It makes sense, but is that not also just perfect for government overreach and a utopian society in which government makes everything wonderful and perfect by making everything generic? We were talking about birthday parties at McDonald's. Did you ever have birthday party at McDonald's, or was that done before you were doing
Yeah,
birthdays?
I think that was done.
I remember going to birthday party, and then they had the play areas. Increasingly, they've done away with those. I don't even, when I lived in Springfield and the girl child was, I don't even think was in kindergarten yet. I know she wasn't. The Burger King on Battlefield and Glenstone, Campbell rather, Battlefield and Campbell. We would take her there, and it was like a huge, big ball pit area, and you could climb around. It smelled. It did not smell pleasant. It didn't.
They all smelled like that, though.
Yeah, it just had this kind of like, oh man, and you knew it wasn't really that sanitary, but at the same time, like, they're kids, I mean. Used to play in the dirt and eat dirt and put rocks and sticks in your mouth. I think if I survive that, a ball pit that is a little unsanitary is just fine. But I don't know that that's there any longer. I'm not sure. I drive by it all the time, but I can't see in my mind. And I'm sure a lot of that's insurance purposes. And I'm sure a lot of it also, increasingly, people don't come in and utilize them. And so they figure, well, why bother? But yeah, you get a kid that gets hurt, and then all of a sudden you get some massive lawsuit. And so I get it. I don't believe that all of those decisions are necessarily wrong-headed. It's just, unfortunately, a sign of where we are today. And I just don't like it. And if I had one wish, it would be that Wendy's brought back the yellow napkins. That's the one wish.
Cakes.
Yeah, that thing really did upset me. For my wife's 40th, I had gotten her a chocolate and vanilla because at the time, you could still get a McDonald's birthday cake at the McDonald's on West Bypass and Chestnut Expressway. And I had purchased one there before because I guess I had found online you could still get one there. And when I went through to get them for or actually went inside to get them for my wife's 40th. And I asked for them, and the girl behind the counter, she's like, "We don't sell birthday cakes." Like, she was like, "Are you insane?" And this older employee walked by, and she said, "What is he looking for?" And she said, "Birthday cakes." She goes, "Oh yeah, we've got them." And the girl's like, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, we have birthday cakes. I'll show you where they are." And so they were back in the freezer, and they were wrapped. I mean, cellophane wrapped in white cake boxes. So if you were back in the freezer, you wouldn't even be able to visually see that it was a cake. But then I went by a couple years after that, and they said they didn't have them any longer, and so I don't know. And at the time, I don't recall where I sourced my information. This was, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago or so. I was told that that was the only one in the Springfield area that still even had them, and so when it went away, unless somebody's does have them or that was incorrect information, it's just very sad. And as you can tell, I'm still clinging to that. And at that 40th, it was years later, a dear friend of mine who was at that party and knew how excited I was about the McDonald's birthday cake would tell me that she never understood because she just thought that they were not good at all. I was like, "Well, you're out of your mind. Of course they're good."
Well, it has them on the McDonald's website.
Okay.
So they're somewhere out there.
And the one thing that they didn't have, that when I was a kid, they were these little 3-dimensional McDonald's figures made out of nothing but pure sugar. They were like shaped sugar cubes, and that was lacking. But other than that, it was nice to have a McDonald's birthday cake. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Nick Reed, Ozarks Elder Law. Yesterday, I accompanied my mother as she went to finalize and sign off on paperwork at Ozarks Elder Law, and the gal that was working on her, I guess that it's called a case, but her arrangements, I suppose, if you will, and what happens should she be incapable of making her own medical decisions, financial decisions when she passes, all that really fun stuff. The gal who handled her case was or her name's Catherine, and had initially met in Joplin, but then so I could be there, met yesterday in Springfield, and just a great job. And I know everyone has their own way of doing things, their own personality, but taking what is sometimes an overwhelming situation, not because of the emotional component to it, but you're talking about a lot of illegal stuff and confusing stuff and things that if that's not your world, you just don't know about it, and making it all very, very simple to understand. All right, this here is this thing, and so what this means is this, and this over here is this thing, and it means this, and probably to someone in the industry seems very elementary, but was just so extremely helpful in understanding the process. And then knowing when it's all said and done that anytime we've got any future questions or the moment comes that we need to activate, if you will, or utilize some of what it is that Ozarks Elder Law did, that we just pick up the phone. And in fact, she joked, if you notice our phone number, we put it on all of your paperwork. Call us with whatever you need. And it's just comforting knowing that you've got that in your corner. And something that, like I said, can be very confusing and overwhelming, having people break it down and make it non-threatening, not something that is overwhelming. It's a really great thing, and Ozarks Elder Law, that's just the experiences that I've had with them most recently yesterday as well, and it's one of the reasons I recommend them also. And of course, just the entire concept of what you're doing, something that you need to do and take care of for yourself and your loved ones, but of course you want to find someone that does it well. And with 10 area locations, Ozarks Elder Law, I recommend them, and that consultation to find out what you need to do, that is a courtesy, because they want to make sure you are as informed as possible about what you need to do, and so that they cover that charge for you. OzarksElderLaw.com, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. There's an interesting story in Breitbart about Gavin Newsom stepping in and intervening in order to attempt to clear a homeless encampment outside of Marshall Lynch's home. Marshall Lynch, a Super Bowl champ, and, he's a VIP guy. Very important person, and Gavin Newsom, buddy, as his agent. This is perfect because this is how socialism works. There are the elites, and then there's everyone else. And this is the irony of socialism. So many of the naive and ignorant who don't understand how socialism works push it because they believe it means equality for everyone. Everyone gets treated equally. It doesn't matter who you are. We're all in this together. And it especially eliminates the unfairness of the super wealthy individuals, number one, existing, but even outside of that, being able to just pick up the phone and getting something done simply because they're rich and powerful, because that's wrong, that's immoral, and so that's why socialism is the path forward. The irony is, of course, is that it's the opposite. That while, yes, in a republic, like we have here, you will have some elected officials that don't give two hoots about the average citizen. They only care about the big donors. They only care about the important people. They only care about the celebrities. Ultimately, we do get to make the choice. And we choose whether we want those elected officials or if we don't want those elected officials. And so there at least is the opportunity that every man can get at least a phone call back or some sort of response from elected officials. I know that just as a citizen, I've utilized those resources in the past, having an issue, by the way, if you think all politicians, they're just, they're worthless, I'm telling you, they get underutilized when it comes to getting certain things done. Like you're having trouble with this office or the DMV's giving you this issue or problem. You find the jurisdiction your appropriate elected representative that has some sort of financial jurisdiction, funding jurisdiction over, and you call them, they can oftentimes get that stuff done for you very quickly. You keep that in mind. If you've got passport issues, if you've got DMV issues, if you've got this, now, of course, they're not absolute magicians, but that's an area where your elected, whether it's a state rep or U.S. senator, or it's just going to depend on their capacity and, of course, how responsive they are. But you can really, truly come out ahead by utilizing your elected official in that capacity. But with socialism, it's only the elites that get that sort of benefit. And this story in Breitbart is about how homelessness is a massive problem in California. Homelessness is something that Gavin Newsom for years and years and years has been saying, I'm going to take care of this problem, though it's only gotten worse under his reign. And for the average person who has, you're a store owner, you have homeless people crapping in front of your storefront, well, that's just the way it is. They know not to even bother trying to call their elected official in order to get something done about it. Oh, we're working on it. We just need more money. We need you to pay more taxes to fix it. But man, the minute some rich and famous person picks up the phone and Gavin Newsom is picking his up and calling in the favors. According to text messages obtained by the San Francisco Chronicle, Newsom's office became very proactive in helping clear a homeless encampment outside the home of the governor's friend and podcast host, Seahawks legend Marshall Lynch. Lynch's agent is also friends with the governor. The homeless encampment became an issue back in 2024 when an RV, a camper, and an SUV set up shop and backed up into the freeway. Lynch was far from the only resident to register a complaint. In fact, Oakland officials received 311 requests to dispense the Dover Street encampment. However, there was no proactiveness coming out of local government. Well, until Gavin Newsom's rich friend placed a phone call to Gavin Newsom's office. According to the text messages, quote, I got a call from the governor's office regarding a number of RVs that are parked out in front of Marshall Lynch's family home. That text from then Oakland Mayor Shang Thau's chief of staff to Oakland City Administrator. Quote, the governor's office is requesting our support to help resolve the issue in a timely manner. See, socialism is beneficial to the wealthy and to the connected. And it isn't just, on one hand, you could say, well, this person's a citizen just like anyone else. No, because the 311 other citizens got no response. The 311 other citizens who are desperately placing phone calls for their own quality of life, their own safety, in order to have this homeless encampment, not just some random homeless person walking down the street, an encampment went completely ignored and unheard until it was a rich, influential friend of the governor. By the way, the reason these text messages were even discovered was because of an investigation going on into the governor of Oakland for taking bribes and pay to play. She apparently, well, according to the indictment, had some buddies that, among other things, own those giant shipping containers, and they worked out a deal where the city would buy from them shipping containers to put homeless people in because compassion. in exchange for doing political favors, buying campaign ads, campaign flyers, and so forth. And there's some other allegations in the indictment as well. And as part of that investigation, combing through text messages, that's where it was discovered that Gavin Newsom's office were making these personal requests on behalf of his rich buddy. So far, Gavin Newsom has acted, best we know, twice to actually do something meaningful in terms of homelessness for the dictator of China and his football-playing rich buddy. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a chance for showers through mid-afternoon, otherwise cloudy with a high near 65. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 55. For your Thursday, a 50% chance of showers throughout the day, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 72. And for Friday, showers with thunderstorms possible in the afternoon with a high near 76.
Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line. Isn't it Marshawn, not Marshall? Yes. Traffic update. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Summer is slowly making its way back to the Ozarks. Doesn't feel like it this week, but it's a-coming. And you know that first really hot day, that's the day you don't want to find out that your AC has a problem. Now, if your AC is currently making strange noises, maybe it's struggling to keep up, or you have uneven cooling throughout your home, it might be time to have the Foreman team out to take a look. Now, they handle everything from repairs to regular maintenance and full system replacements if it is time for an upgrade. Now, I've used them for every single one of those items. Also, I've used them for their 24/7 emergency service line as well. And let me tell you, every experience with Foreman has just been amazing. They are upfront and honest about the work that needs to be done, and they're just genuine people. Now, if it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home, reach out to Russell today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
R.A. Fleischer made an interesting notation on X regarding what are perceived as oftentimes anti-immigrant Israel Republicans versus anti-Israel or anti-Semitic Democrats, and how whenever and Massey was used as an example here, that Massey has been, I don't think he's an anti-Semitic guy. Now, he did make a crack about trying to, when he lost, call his opponent, but he couldn't get a hold of him. He was in Tel Aviv. It's just like that. That's what you're going to make I mean, come on. When you start, there's just an emotional component that could invite some people to believe that it's becoming more about a hatred towards a certain people than an actual policy thing when you start making jabs like that. I'm not saying that means that he is that way, but when you start doing that, it just seems a little, I don't know. I don't think it's positive. But Ari Fleischer's point was, particularly when you give the media tries to paint Republicans or Trump as anti-Semitic, anytime there is a Republican candidate that is less pro-Israel and there is a primary, like Massey, for example, they don't survive. Yet for Democrats, the more anti-Semitic you are, the better you do in primaries. The more you rip on Jews, the more you accuse Israel of committing genocide and accuse Jews of being Nazis, that is the key to success for Democrats. And that's a pretty interesting observation. I mention that because of a Democrat candidate running for Texas's 35th congressional district by the name of Maureen Galindo, who posted on Instagram that she would turn an ICE detention center near San Antonio into a prison for American Zionists. As a Zionist, someone who believes that Jews should not be wiped off the earth and that as natives to the area that is known as Israel, that they have the right to exist there. This is a political party that ran around claiming Donald Trump was going to round up people and put them in concentration camps. You have a Democrat literally saying that she is going to take a facility, which the ICE facilities oftentimes are referred to by Democrats as concentration camps, and throw Jews in them. She also said that she would throw in there pedophiles, which she argued that most Zionists are anyhow. So Jews are also now pedophiles that deserve to be thrown in concentration camps. This is a Democrat candidate running for office in Texas. I mean, these people are insane. They are insane. And as much as you have the media try to run cover for Democrats and still try and claim that, and I'm still waiting for Trump to start rounding people up and throwing in concentration camps, when you actually have candidates from your party saying this detention center, yeah, I'm going to start rounding up the Jews, the Zionists, and throw them in. Or the pro-Jewish people, along with the Jews. Most Jews probably Zionists. and pedophiles, because they're pretty much the same anyway. There is, now speaking of Nazis that are supported by Democrats, Plattner's back in the news. This is the Democrat candidate for Senate up in Maine that was doing so well in the primaries amongst Democrats after it was revealed he had a Nazi tattoo, specifically one that was worn by guards of the concentration camps, that his opponent just dropped out. Well, can't overcome this. It's way too popular, this guy. And he's made it in the news for a number of different reasons. Things he said about black people, talking about when he was a bartender, how black people, he's just amazed how all the stereotypes about black people are true. They never tip. Said if women are so worried about rape, quit going out and drinking around people who may rape you. He talked recently about, I guess the most PG way I can put this, pleasuring himself in porta potties. I mean, just in and how he can't go in one without wanting. I mean, just stuff that's weird. That this is an adult person. We're not talking about some private conversation that the guy had that somebody recorded and released. This guy's just weird. In fact, I think he's worse than weird. That's not normal. That's like this guy's a deviant. He's most recently found himself in trouble because of comments he made about a person in the military being shot while serving. And there was I'm trying to find the exact quote here. I got to take a quick break, and then because I want to get the exact quote here from this. It was somebody, I think, during the Iraq War, and he was shot and he was almost killed. And the comments, the video was posted on social media, and the comments that Plattner made about this individual, and essentially that he deserved to die, just trashing on this person serving the country, is the latest comment that has surfaced in which he's, having to address, if you will, for lack of a better term. All right, we got traffic standing by. We're going to hit that 2 minutes from there, weather, and then update you on the latest posting from the Nazi tattoo wearing Democrat favorite for the Senate in Maine, and postings that he made about a now veteran who at the time was fighting the Taliban and was shot 4 times, made mocking him on social media because, class act.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see a chance for showers through mid-afternoon, otherwise cloudy with a high near 65. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 55. For your Thursday, a 50% chance of showers throughout the day, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 72. And for Friday, showers with thunderstorms possible in the afternoon with a high near 76.
Graham Plattner is continuing, and this stuff I think is deliberately not all coming out at once. It's sort of the drip of insane things that the Democrat nominee for the Senate in Maine have said that, to me, listen, there are certain things that you can say, and at the time, and you're in maybe a different setting, and maybe you shouldn't say it if it's not that really big of a deal. But then there's certain things that, to me, suggest there's something wrong with you. And I think that Graham Plattner has demonstrated that with a number of the comments that he's made, particularly when it comes to rape. Back in 2019, he had posted on his Reddit account a video of a Private First Class Ted Daniels taken during a clash with Taliban fighters, and it was taken by Helmet Cam. And in the video, he was shot 4 times and he earned a Purple Heart for his injuries. Graham Plattner posted that video on Reddit with the following comment: "Dumb mother effer didn't deserve to live." No, he's not talking about the Taliban. He's talking about Private First Class Ted Daniels. "Dumb mother effer didn't deserve to live. At least his stupidity and fat-ass wheezing are available for all future infantrymen to witness and hold in contempt. Poor marksmanship on the Taliban's part is the only reason this mouth breeder made it home. He managed to make every possible blank decision possible when it comes to small unit combat." The post, of course, was deleted because he's running for office, but it's the internet. Now, Daniels, for his part, the individual that Plattner was mocking for getting shot, said in interviews that he purposefully moved into the open to draw fire away from other men in his unit, and while he expressed embarrassment and said tactically it was not a sound thing to do, ultimately he had decided at the time to put himself on the line for the other guys. I understand that if you're in law enforcement, you're in the military, your perspective on things and judgment on things are going to be much different than the average person for completely understandable reasons. I also understand that in company of those very people, there are going to be conversations that you have that you probably wouldn't share with others. The problem I have is when you are posting this sort of stuff on social media for the entire world to see. Like you're deliberately sharing it with people, many of which are non-military, in order to completely mock a person who is serving his country, and whether it was a poor decision or not, telling the world that somebody serving their country in this manner didn't deserve to live. Like I said, if you got a bunch of guys who served, they saw combat, and you're in a closed session and you're watching it, and one makes a comment like that, I think that's a totally different situation. There's a different situation than broadcasting it for the world and trashing on our U.S. military, and specifically targeting for public ridicule another human being, an American, for the world to see. I mean, I don't know what more can come out about this guy to demonstrate that Democrats are just completely insane and they're drawn towards insane people. This is how you can explain the fact that you get these left-wing activists, particularly white liberal women, who are the worst, that become fangirls of Luigi Mangione, a guy who murders a CEO of a company because they didn't like him. Didn't like how he ran the company. The Democrat Party really, truly is increasingly becoming an insane asylum. And watching what are otherwise normal Democrats get coaxed into defending this stuff because, oh, Donald Trump is evil, so you have to support this person. I mean, you folks are getting sucked into a horrible, awful, culturally rotting political party with no morality, all in the name of morality against Donald Trump. And this is how good people become bad. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company, lots of rain in the forecast over the next couple of days. And if you have damage from the hailstorm, but you didn't really know it, you may know it if you have leaks or yellowing on your ceiling pop up. If that is the case, make sure that you go with a trusted roofing professional. And I always like to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, they offer emergency tarping services if needed, and they work with you through that insurance process, and they will also meet with your adjuster. In fact, they make that meeting a top priority, and I know that gives some a real peace of mind. And finally, they offer discounts for our military and first responders on new roof installs. So if over the next couple of days you experience any type of roof issue, make sure to reach out to Josh and schedule that free roof inspection. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
There is a story in OK Magazine about Kamala Harris and how she might be leaving her husband. Kamala Harris determined to win Democrat nomination for president with or without husband Doug Emhoff as divorce rumors erupt, according to a source. All this is deliberate. I think most of you at this point recognize that a story like this doesn't just pop up accidentally. I go, oh, well, this is interesting. I hear that they're I think we'll write a story about it. All this stuff is deliberate. Now, I believe this is planted by the Kamala Harris people, and I'll explain that in a moment. But one of the pieces, one of the segments of the article notes that she's really dedicated to the idea of running for the presidency, but last time Donald Trump just almost broke up her marriage. It was just too much. Just too much. Was it not last week or the week before Barack Obama said something similar? About
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
That he and Michelle's marriage have had some stress and troubles because of Donald Trump.
Which, how embarrassing.
What is wrong with these people? They like to dismiss this notion of Trump derangement syndrome, but if this guy, who's not part of your personal life, this is what politics is. You run against opponents, and they say things about you, and you say things about them. This isn't some new game. This is how it works. Donald Trump is just a guy who, in our republic, utilized the democratic process to get on the ballot like anyone else who ever had, and then the American people said, yeah, that's the guy we want. just like everyone else who's ever been president, just like everyone else who's ever run for office. These Democrats have, running around that claim that they're leaders, that have the backbone to be leader of the free world, yet then they fully acknowledge that Donald Trump, that they are so obsessed with Donald Trump and that he drives them, he's got such control over them that their marriages are having trouble. It's not like, he's hitting on your wife and the wife's like, well, he doesn't mean anything by it. And you come home and he's home fixing the sink and you're like, what are you doing here? Oh, I just stopped by. That's not what's happening here. He's a politician. He's the president. The same people who want you to elect them to run the country, which Obama twice successfully convinced people to do so, that they're the ones who can take on the really bad guys, that when it really comes down to staring across that table with world leaders and dictators, that you need them. They have that steely resolve. They've got the emotional disposition to be able to, while everyone is chaotic and out of control, to be the calm in the storm, yet Donald Trump is ruining their marriage. They have so little emotional control. Now, in their minds, much like people on the left, being a victim is virtuous and demonstrates how bad the world around them is. So when Barack Obama or Kamala Harris's people are talking about how Donald Trump just really puts stress on their marriage, in their minds, that's not weakness. That is explaining to you how bad Donald Trump is. That's how their minds work. Now, Kamala Harris, why? How would it benefit Kamala Harris to divorce Doug Emhoff? By the way, I think that there's a very good chance that this isn't just for the purpose of rumor talk. I think she may do it. Now, take out you could have the easy go-to, well, maybe they just decided they wanted to get divorced. That's not really how it works in the world of politics. I mean, do you really think Bill Clinton would still be married to Hillary Clinton if they weren't political figures? He'd probably actually be dead by now, but marriages, when you're talking about high-profile politicians, they stay married, even if they aren't necessarily interested in one another. So Kamala Harris potentially getting divorced from old Dougie would not be simply because they don't want to be married any longer. Excuse me. Kamala Harris cannot run on her record. She can't run on success. She can't run on anything other than I'm a black woman. That's it. Try to repeat the Obama win of making history. It wasn't about Obama. It didn't matter that he didn't really have any sort of resume. He was just some community organizer that didn't ever do anything, could never say, oh, here's something I took over. This is what it looked like before. Here's how much better it was afterwards. So it was all about us. Us making history. Us showing that we had finally moved past the sins of racism. Kamala Harris, that is, in all likelihood, the only game plan that she has. It is making history once again, this time as a black woman. Now, this would be, she's got to get the nomination first. Black women are obviously going to be important, as are black men. One of the unspoken, wasn't even a criticism, but a suspicion that a lot of people had in the black community is that Kamala Harris was married to a white guy. Now, you could come across this. You weren't going to see it on the MSNBC panels. You weren't going to see it in the lead up to the election by the mainstream media outlets because that kind of messes up the messaging. But it was out there. It'd pop up in places like Charlemagne the God with callers calling in and being like, I don't understand. She keeps going, but she married a white guy, and I don't like that. It also, in the minds of a lot of people, doesn't necessarily paint the black community that great when you're trying to claim white people are the racist ones. But if you have black people that are saying, I may not vote, I'm suspicious of her because she married somebody that is of a different race. I don't think it is outside the realm of possibility that the Kamala Harris people recognize that within the black community that they need out in, absolute full force for her to get the nomination, that she might lose a little bit of support because she's still married to a white guy. Maybe not a massive amount, but recognizing they need everything they can get. Plus, what demonstrates strength more than a black woman who is stepping outside the comfort of marriage, who is breaking through the unknown, and a black woman in America being single? How many people can relate to that in the black community? And she knows, because the media they would trip over themselves. All of these profiles about how brave it is for a woman, particularly of color, to acknowledge when it is that the marriage isn't working, and that as difficult as it is, as many challenges that are out there, she knows as a black woman in America, all of the obstacles that perhaps being married to a white guy have somehow helped her sort of get around. That was the secret path to not necessarily having to deal with some of these same obstacles as a black woman. And even though she knows that, she still did what she knew was right because she's a strong, independent black woman. And that victimhood, which to the left is virtuous, making that a theme of her campaign. If I'm advising Kamala Harris, and I recognize that there's nothing about her record, about her actual accomplishments that we can run her on, this is what I would suggest. Nothing screams strong, brave, independent black woman like one who is willing to go out on her own after benefiting from the comforts of being married to a privileged white guy. And how brave that makes her, and how admirable, and what an icon and role model she should be for all women, particularly women of color across this country. That's how I'd tell her to sell herself. What else has she got? So we'll see. Now, I know all that I just laid out is a very, very, very long journey from a simple article regarding the fact that their marriage may be on the rocks, but it could also play out that way. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Working with Emily was an absolute pleasure from start to finish. We've had the opportunity to both buy and sell properties with Emily's help. Each experience exceeded our expectations. Her deep knowledge of the market, strategic insights, keen eye for value truly made a difference every single step of the way. Beyond her expertise, she was a genuine delight to work with, professional, responsive, and always looking out for our best interest. That's what you get with Emily Johnson. Now, you can see her reviews on Zillow. You can see her reviews, I'm sure. I mean, anywhere that there are reviews, obviously, you can see them. And you'll just hear with consistency, very specific, oftentimes, details. You can tell when someone is incentivizing their clients to post to make a posting or review, because oftentimes it's up 5 stars and it's 1 or 2 sentences. You oftentimes get detailed paragraphs with Emily Johnson, and that tells you a lot. Home buying, home selling, sometimes both, just like that reviewer said. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Sarah asked a really good question as I hypothesize the potential campaign move of Kamala Harris dropping Dougie from the marriage. And this is because of an article in, what was this? Let me find the OK Magazine. Kamala Harris determined to win Democrat nomination for president with or without husband as divorce rumors erupt. And it's not an eruption. I think this is specifically planted. And I think that I think potentially because she will get divorced, and potentially, and it's all for marketing purposes that I explained in the previous segment. Sarah asked a very good question. Who will get her Doritos? Sorry.
That's considered a good question.
I'm sorry, her Doritos.
Doritos.
Doritos. Dougie gets my Doritos.
Dougie. They have Doritos.
Well, you mentioned, and there's so much about him that got glossed over during the campaign, of course.
Yeah.
One, that he had knocked up their nanny, and then didn't he force her to, or try to get her to, force her to get an abortion? Isn't that what the former nanny had said?
I believe so.
Because that's what,
then he beat up a previous girlfriend.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be at Cannes or something, or there's some event, and according to people that were there, he just hauled off and clocked his girlfriend at the time because he accused her of flirting with the valet. Hauled off and cold cocked her with a closed fist. But of course,
that's just Dougie.
That's just Dougie. That's his way, you see. Having a D next to your name, being a Democrat, just is this hall pass to do whatever you want. You can get Nazi tattoos, you can rape women, you can knock up nannies and force them to get abortions, you can punch girlfriends in the middle of a public place because you think she flirted with a valet. I mean, you can just do unlimited things. It is the most amazing world that one could ever live in. Now, unless, of course, you have morals. You're in touch with your own soul, and you don't see that stuff as fun stuff or as beneficial to yourself as a human being, then it may not necessarily be the party for you. But if you want that hall pass to be basically the world's biggest a-hole, just join the Democrat Party, and off you go. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.